the $6 million man, Jeff Petry, and there's a lot of questions surrounding him and Ryan Poehling. But Petry is the centerpiece of this deal, Ron, and of course Mike Matheson, who had something of a rejuvenation in his career in Pittsburgh, goes the other way. And here to talk about that from the Montreal perspective is Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette. He's on the Nemacolin fan hotline. Stu, we appreciate you joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
We're doing good, and we're very curious about Jeff Petry and what kind of season he had and what happened to him. I guess he was stripped of the A at some point, seemed to not like the system, but rebounded late. How would you characterize his season?
It was a season where everything, both on and off the ice, seemed to go wrong for Petry. On the ice, Dominic Ducharme, the head coach, who was fired about halfway through his system, Petry was not a fan of it, and he wasn't alone. A lot of players on the team weren't. The system wasn't working. Ducharme wouldn't change it, and Petry, who's usually a really soft-spoken guy, was vocal about how much the system wasn't working, how much he didn't like it with the media, which was a little bit surprising at the time. But at the time, I also figured he was speaking for the guys in the room, and later on, Petry confirmed that. Off the ice, with the COVID-19 restrictions in Quebec, which were quite strict, his wife, who has 3 young boys and was pregnant with a 4th child, she's from the Houston area, so her parents couldn't come across the border to sort of give her a hand and be with the boys, and neither could his parents, who were in the Michigan area. So she sort of was upset with that and decided to just pack up the boys and go back home to the family home in Michigan, leaving Petry here alone. So, you would always see Jeff before the games at the Bell Center playing with his 3 boys while the players are doing their stretching. Very active dad, and seemed to really enjoy being around his boys. So that was hard for him. So on the ice, things weren't going good. Off the ice, things weren't going good. He asked for a trade. He played a lot better after Marty St. Louis took over from Ducharme as head coach and brought in a system that was more to Jeff's liking. A guy who likes to carry the puck and skate with the puck, and the defensive zone coverage was more to his liking also, and Petry's game improved. Right from the time he asked to be traded, new GM Ken Hughes has said he would deal Petry, but only if it was a trade that would help the Canadians moving forward. And as it dragged on, he also said that he was willing to just have Jeff stay here and play the last 3 years of his contract in Montreal if he couldn't find a trade to his liking. So the Matheson trade is a trade that seems to work well for both teams. For Pittsburgh fans, they'll be wondering if Petry's problems last season were more because of the off-ice stuff or if his game is indeed starting to slip. And for the Canadians, they get a Montreal native coming back home who's coming off the best season of his career. And they hope that obviously he can continue that coming back to Montreal.
Stu, a lot of us here are a little bit concerned about the Penguins becoming a very old team. And I see Petry's going to be 35 in December. Does he still have a lot left for you?
Well, that's the question. I mean, some guys in the NHL can get old quick, right? So was last season, was it just the off-ice issues and the unhappiness with the coach, or was it Jeff Petry getting older? For Penguins fans, I guess the bright spot is that he did play a lot better when Marty St. Louis took over. And as Petry said yesterday, he's hoping he can carry that into next season. But that's the question, and you're right. I mean, Pittsburgh is an older team, but Hextall obviously believes they still have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, and that window is getting smaller when you look at the age of Crosby and Letang and the others. So, Jeff doesn't make them any younger. He makes them older, but and puts, I guess, more pressure on the Penguins to be in the Stanley Cup contention next year and in the next couple of years.
Stu Cowan, Montreal Gazette. So I also read, I think this was on Sportsnet, where, yes, he did respond to Marty St. Louis' system, but it wasn't long before Petry tweaked a back injury suffered earlier in the season. Any story behind that, and did that have anything to do with his rotten start?
Well, that might have, and in the playoffs when the Canadians went to the Stanley Cup final, you might remember he had a pretty gruesome injury when his fingers got caught in the hole that's cut out in the glass for the photographers to put their cameras in. And you might remember him playing in the playoffs with these really bloodshot eyes. Apparently when they put it back into place, he had passed out.
Wow.
And he played through – the Canadians were only going with 4 defensemen during their run to the Stanley Cup final, so he played a lot of minutes with a mangled finger and played quite well during the playoffs. So, again, getting older, there's going to be some injury issues there. He's had a few. good thing, I guess, for the Penguins' perspective is that it's been a long off season for him since the Canadians didn't make the playoffs. So hopefully for Petry, he'll be able to get his body back. And he's in incredible shape, Jeff Petry. He's one of those guys you could shoot a bullet at him and it would bounce off him. He's in the gym a lot. The thing with Petry, he took a lot of heat here in Montreal because of last season and being vocal about the system and about his wife wanting to leave. But to me, he's always been a really good guy to deal with. He's a smart guy. He's a soft-spoken guy. Athletic background. As you know, his dad was a pitcher for the Tigers and won the World Series. If I was a betting man, I would think Petry will be able to bounce back and have a solid season with the Penguins next year.
That's what I'm thinking as well, Stu, and I wanted to ask you one other thing about him before we move on, and that is from that same story. They talked to a couple of scouts late in the year when he was on basically a point-per-game streak and finished very strong. One of the scouts said he at this point, looks like the same guy he was that helped Montreal on their playoff run. Did he look like that guy to you, and do you believe that the Penguins can have that player? What kind of player is he when he's at his best?
He's a really good player. Petry's one of those guys. He's like what's that thing? The little girl with the curl. When he's good, he's very, very good, and when he's bad, he can be bad. He's one of those guys that when he makes a mistake early in the game, he can let it get to him and carry that on. I think Luke Richardson, as a defensive coach here in Montreal, really helped Jeff get over that. Petry spoke often about how much Richardson helped him with his game. Richardson, of course, has moved on now to be the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. But a healthy Petry and healthy in body and in mind with his family situation resolved. His wife gave birth to their fourth son last week. If he's happy off the ice, I think he still has gas left in the tank. And as I said, I think he can be an effective defenseman for the Penguins moving forward.